All right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us here early Friday morning for our Ohio Beef Council virtual field trips. We're excited to have you here today. Let's go through a couple housekeeping things about how the virtual field trip's actually going to work. So we want to make this as interactive as possible. So we've got two ways that you can interact with our farmer here today. Your teacher can put in questions directly into the chat box. And then you can also utilize our microphone and video technology that we have to ask Erin, our farmer, directly. So if you have a question, I can see all of you at the top of my screen. So just go ahead and wave, and then when we've got a kind of a break in the action, I'll swap over to you and I'll tell Erin that you have a question coming her way. So she can hear you, but she cannot see you. So we'll just make sure that we kind of communicate that with her as we go. So without further ado, we will turn it over to our beef farmer, Erin. Erin, how are you this morning?
Hey, good morning, everybody. Greetings from brisk Northwest Ohio here. Coming to you from Bowling Green, just outside of Bowling Green, Ohio. Go Falcons, that's my alma mater. So this morning I just want to visit with you guys a little bit about our operation here in the former Great Black Swamp, Western Lake Erie watershed. Here in this region, Webster Township primarily, we farm about 1,600 acres with we are what we like to call a diversified farming operation. Everything that we do kind of ties together to the bigger picture for what we are trying to provide for our family, helping to sustain the land and just take the best quality and care of the livestock that the good Lord has left to our care. So our operation consists of processing tomatoes, something of which my father-in-law and his father started. We are a third generation operation here, but processing tomatoes for a local distributor in this region. We also farm row crops, like most of you are probably familiar with, corn, soybeans, and wheat. We also grow alfalfa, and we have a pretty sizable hay and straw business that not only that we utilize for our operation, but also that we sell to customers throughout the country. So it's a very unique business in the fact that everything that we do ties together. So the ground that we grow tomatoes on, that will be rotated for our food grade soybeans that we will grow the following year. And all of those nutrients that we provide the soil and the earth with all go to the next crop and the next crop and the next crop. So which then brings us to our cattle operation. You can see, so I'm standing here in what we call kind of our calving barn. We have approximately 40 cows on average. Right now, I think we're running 38, but typically we try to stay around 40 mama cows on our operation. And with that, we are a commercial operation. So some of you may be familiar with like a breed, Angus or Herefords or Simmentals or what have you. Most of our cattle are Angus-based genetics, but that doesn't mean that they are registered. So our cattle are raised for commercial purposes, and after a while, we'll go see our feed lot. Sorry, my husband's just finishing distributing feed here. I don't know if there's a lot of background noise or not, but so for our cows, like I said, 40 cows. This is our calving barn. You can kind of see everybody's kind of chill this morning. I don't know if you guys feel this relaxed on a normal Friday morning. I'm not sure that I usually do, but these girls don't have a whole lot of concerns in the world. You can see this bull right here. We've been out here messing around in this pen for the last, probably hour, and he's just been chilling. So we like to think that our cows and the bulls that we are raising and that are on our farm, they have a pretty good life. This barn, like I said, is used primarily for calving, but also throughout the year we may bring some steers in here or whatever. But the cows primarily live here and then out in a pasture area that we have that we'll show you as we move on to the next spot. But our mama cows are all between the ages of 2 years old to, we have a few that are like 8 or 10 years old. Their life cycle here on our farm just kind of depends. If they're producing for us and they are happy and their conformation stays together, they can live here until the good Lord calls them home. But that's all about their health and their well-being is how we determine how long that they stay here. We also select for traits like docility. As you can see, these girls are just hanging out this morning and enjoying the brisk fall morning. So that's kind of the overview of what we've got going on here. We also have and like I said, what we'll talk about in a few minutes is our feedlot. So we have a feedlot over here that we feed approximately 450 to 500 head of cattle a year. Some that we raise from our 40 head, but also ones that we purchase from other cattlemen throughout the country. So, and then they come here, we feed them out, and then at about 16 months of age, they are your dinner. So that's kind of the life cycle on our farm. And we'll talk about a few other things like how we handle the manure from the animals and all that kind of stuff later on. So that's kind of the overview, Campbell. Oh, I know what I forgot to say, guys. So my name is Erin. I should have started with that. Nice to meet you all. I'm glad you could be with us. My name is Erin. I grew up on a corn and soybean farm, and we also raised sheep where I grew up just 6 miles west of here. And then when my husband and I got married, we have since started working together. And my background is in the grain business. I was a commodity merchant for a company for about 10 years and have since decided to be home with my family and work on the farm for the last few months. So I'm loving the life that we're able to have here. Together, Andy and I have 4 children. We have a 12-year-old son, an 8-year-old daughter, and 2 babies, Gia and Julia, who are 2 and 1. So we've got a lot going on and a lot of sports, a lot of 4-H activities and all that fun stuff. My husband, Andy, and his brother, Brian, are the 2 primary operators of this operation from a daily operation business standpoint. And then we have 1 full-time employee. His name is Dan, and he's essential to our business as well. So my in-laws, Dale and Elise, just 2 of the finest people you'll ever meet. And they've kept this business going for a number of years, and they've entrusted us to continue to grow the business and take care of the animals that are here at our helm. So, Campbell, I've probably rambled enough. I don't know what the next thing you'd like me to talk about.
I think we're good. Guys, if you have any questions, make sure you're throwing them in chat or giving us a wave. We haven't had any questions yet, but Erin, let's maybe talk about what we're looking at right here. I know we've got a bull, we've got some mama cows, we've seen a couple calves kind of moving around here, but maybe point them out for some folks, and we can talk about how all 3 of those different sizes and sexes
Sure.
kind of come into play.
Sure. So right here next to me, this big old guy here, he's about 2.5 years old. This is a bull. Our operation is maybe a little different than some. Right now, and most of the year actually, our bulls run with our cows. They do get separated every now and then, but for us, it works from a life cycle standpoint. When the cows are ready to be bred, they're able to be bred by the bulls that are here. So this guy right here, he's not real scary. This is a bull, and then I don't know if you can see back in the back here. I don't really want everybody to get up, but this big red bull back here, his name is Ted. He's actually a red Angus bull that my husband bought about 5 years ago, and he's kind of been our foundation to our herd for the last several years. Right here, this gal right here with the tag 24, she's a mama cow. She's about 4 years old, and she has produced a calf every single year that she's been on our farm. Since she was about 2 years old, she started to have calves, naturally bred by Ted, and then and she's one we actually raised. So she was born on this farm, has since lived on this farm, started having calves when she was about 2, and now we're about 2 or 3 years into that, and she's producing calves for us still today. And then the calves back here, I don't really want everybody to get up, but the calves back here, they're usually fairly curious and will come around. But these calves, most of them were born the beginning of July to the end of August. So you see a variation of sizes. In our operation, we don't typically, breed all the cows for one specific time period. We typically like the mid to late summer calves for a portion of our herd, and then the other portion we do have winter calving. The summer calves, they work for us because our operation is, like I mentioned earlier, quite diversified, and we have the ability to kind of be around and checking in on them. The winter calves, obviously, if you guys think about it, calving in the winter time, that can be a little challenging with the weather, and all of you are from Ohio, so you know the variation that we have on a daily basis, let alone a monthly basis when it gets super cold outside. You'll see in the feedlot there's some calves that were probably winter born and are missing like parts of their ear, things like that, and that's just from frostbite because it was too cold when they were born, and they didn't get warm enough in the beginning. So we don't have any of that going on here because these calves are little guys. And let's see if I can get them up here. All right, Mama Cow. Come here, dude.
All right, so while Erin's sliding around there and see if she can wrangle a calf up, oh, here it comes. Very cool.
Yeah, I'm not really a cowboy. I don't really have a rope and, whatever that's called. My friend would be mad at me for not knowing that term. But so anyway, this little guy was born here probably at the end of June, first part of July, just starting to grow. This calf, so what this calf does is he drinks from his mama right now exclusively. You can see some of these cows, their udders are pretty big, and they're milking calves. So just like sorry, there's some feedback there. Excuse me. So that they drink exclusively from their moms right now, and then at about 4 months, 3 months of age, they start getting introduced to grain, and from there, their life cycle continues into the feedlot and things like that. But yeah, so these little calves, they just kind of hang out with their moms. The moms hang out here in the calving barn or in the lot. And our operation, because of where we're located, which differentiates from some other producers in Ohio, here we don't have a lot of extra ground for grazing. Our land here is very, very productive. It's really, really productive. And so giving up land to graze cattle is not always the most lucrative business decision. And so what we have is we have a pasture lot that's about 15 acres here to the east. And the cows do get out there in the summertime and graze on that grass. Then we end up cutting that grass for the hay that we feed them in the wintertime. But for us, our cows live in these dry lots, as we call it. They're dry lotted most of their life. And and just as comfort as all get out. So I don't know if you guys, where you're from, had the pretty strong winds here earlier this week, and it was pretty brutal here. Today is just a beautiful morning. But earlier this week, the winds were blowing and howling, and these baby calves, they were able to be protected here inside this building. Now, calves that are raised not in Northwest Ohio or in other places of which they have hills and natural barriers to get out of the wind and such, that's how they do that. But we provide this shelter for them to live throughout their life.
Very good. Erin, let's maybe talk about, that very first step when the calf comes. You said you guys like being around. Maybe talk about how big they are, when they're born, if you guys have to help out, kind of what that looks like.
Sure. So on our farm, we like our mama cows to be pretty self-sustaining. We don't ideally, and no cattleman does, but we don't ideally want to have to help them have their calves. We want them to be able to be bred, live during that pregnancy, and then lay down and have their calf without any assistance. Now, there are times of which we have to help them, of course, but that's why we choose bulls that have a low birth weight. EPD means they're known to have a low birth weight or easy calving ability with their mates. So when calves are born, ideally they're between 60 and 80 pounds on our farm. That gives them enough vigor and enough body mass to sustain whether they're born in July or whether they're born in February. And from that time, as soon as they're born, we make sure that whether we're here with the mama cow or it's maybe 5 or 6 hours later, if we're busy doing other things, we want to make sure that that calf has gotten that first drink of milk, gotten that colostrum to really get that extra nutrients. So if for some reason, let's say the mom is having a hard time milking or the baby just will not nurse, we are able to help these calves and supplement their diet with the colostrum that we've collected from other cows over time. So they help each other. And again, this whole life cycle of from the point of feed to the end, we are able to provide all of that for these calves. I don't know if you can see off to the back, right behind cow 24, there's a calf. He's a little bit bigger, and he's starting to eat some grain. So he's born, sorry. He's born between 60 and 80 pounds, and I don't know exactly what his birth weight was. but he was born, I think, at the beginning of June. So you can see he's quite a bit bigger than that other guy that I moved up here. So he's actually starting to eat some grain and getting his stomach more accustomed to a higher energy, higher nutrient diet than what he's just been doing, drinking his mama's milk. So, and at about 6 months of age, 4 months to 6 months of age, these calves will start to get the process of maybe not needing their mamas quite as much. Just kind of like, not trying to humanize, but like a human, where you start to not be as reliant on what your parents provide you. These calves start to not need them quite as much either. So when the calves get to about that 4 to 6 months of age, we will then start to wean them off, and then they will be fed more of a grain and roughage-based diet. So that's kind of where the calf lifestyle starts. So the cows get bred, the cows go about 9 months, and then they have a calf. The calf grows, drinks mama's milk, and then we move on to the next phase of their life.
Very good. Any questions for Erin, guys? Not seeing anything. I think now's probably a good time to kind of transition to over the feedlot, Erin. We can start to talk about kind of what the cattle are eating, get more into the details on the nutrition side. So
Sure.
While we're making this transition, I know there might be a couple things that Erin wants to go as we hop on the gator and kind of go around. But just some additional facts to kind of Ohio's beef industry. So Ohio is currently the 13th largest beef state in the United States. So like Erin said, Ohio is a very lush, very fertile, land base. So we have a lot of opportunity in certain areas to grow vegetables, to grow row crops. So we don't have the rangeland like, Nebraska, Texas, Oklahoma. So while our beef herd's a little bit smaller than them, we still have a ton of operations. So there's over 17,000 beef farms in the state of Ohio, and we've got them in all 88 counties. So average herd size is right around 15 right now, based on the last ag census. So small herds, for the most part. A lot of folks just have a couple mama cows or calves that they kind of have to work with at the end of the day. They'll have a normal job. So by all accounts, Erin's herd and her family's herd is fairly large in Ohio, but in the grand scheme of things, you start to look at some of those big beef producing states, still a relatively small herd altogether. So like I said earlier, we want to make sure this is as interactive as possible for you guys. I know it's early. Indian Valley may be a little inundated with all of the announcements that they had earlier this morning. So if you guys have questions, give us a wave on camera, and we'll be sure to switch you back over, and that way you can ask Erin. So other things that we would like to kind of highlight as we're moving here. So Erin said, they're up near Lake Erie, and we're going to talk a little bit about the sustainability factor when it comes to beef farming. Farmers are so reliant on the land and the resources around them. So it's very important that we take care of them, and we're investing into that land and keeping our waterways safe. So Erin's almost set up here, and we're definitely going to talk about that here in just a second. So Erin, we're getting close here. As you're finishing up, let's maybe talk about what we're getting ready to see cattle-wise, and then let's talk a little bit about what they're eating there in front of you. So camera looks good.
Okay, sounds good. All right, so we just actually probably moved not even 100 yards from the calving barn. But where we're standing now is our feedlot. So like we mentioned before, we have an enclosed building with great ventilation. So in this building, we will have somewhere between 200 to 250 cattle at a time. It just kind of depends on where we decide how many we want to have in here. This building is capable of holding that many. But it also depends on cattle health, as well as what the cattle market is doing. So I think we have mostly high schoolers here, and I'm sure you guys have talked a little bit about economics and probably the market a little bit. But as a business operation, we have to make sure that we are making the right decisions financially for our farm. So that's a whole nother session, and that's my bread and butter. So I like talking about that. But anyway, so what we're looking at is these cattle, these heifers that are standing right here. And a heifer, most of you probably know, a heifer is a female cow that has not ever had a calf. These girls are about 650 to 700 or 800 pounds. It just depends. We just actually got this group in here about 2 weeks ago. So they've become familiar with our facility, familiar with their new home, and they come up and eat here at the feed bunk at their disposal. So, I mean, I don't know. There's probably a few football players listening in that have that same lifestyle. They just got to have all that nutrients and everything, throughout the day to keep their bodies going and ready for football Friday night. So these girls right here, what you're seeing them eat is a combination of a balanced diet. So protein, energy, and roughage. So on our farm, our cattle get their protein source from distiller's grain. Does anybody know what distiller's grain is? I'm sure some of you down there in Mercer County and such definitely have an idea of that. So distiller's grain is the co-product of the ethanol process. Ethanol being a fuel made by corn. So distillers is the co-product of that process that is super high in protein and a great protein source for cattle diets. It's easily digestible. It's a great combination source of nutrients for these animals. And when combined with other corn products like corn silage, which I have here, another product, I don't know, you either love it or hate it, but I love the smell of silage. Silage is the fermented product of the corn process. We cut silage. We actually just got done cutting silage this week, probably a little later than some folks. But we got done cutting silage this week, which is the whole corn stalk ground up together, including the ear, that then we put into a bag, and it ferments over time. So it's really sweet and really complements. I mean, for those of you in the food science classes or the food science classes, it just brings that whole ration together and offers these cattle both a roughage source as well as an energy source and the protein from the distillers. We also include hay, which mostly we cut ourselves, but the hay is the roughage source. So cattle have 4 compartments to their stomach. Most of you have probably heard cattle have 4 stomachs. Well, they have 4 compartments to their stomach, and the roughage helps them to easily digest everything that they are eating. So what we do, these cattle here eat approximately 15 pounds of feed per day. You can see, and I don't know if Nick can scan, but you can see that their feed bunk is full all day long. We feed typically twice a day, and every time we feed, we push the feed back up so the cattle have easy access to the feed all day long, and they come at their disposal. So they get that little nudge that they want to eat, and they come and eat up to 15 pounds of feed per day.
Gotcha, great question. Erin, we've got a couple questions in from Ross Middle School. What if a cow or a steer, a heifer, gets sick or injured? Maybe walk us through that process of kind of what you do working with your veterinarian.
Sure. So when you're raising livestock, you have to have a relationship with your veterinarian, and we do. We have a pretty solid relationship with ours. And if a calf gets sick or injured, let's talk about being sick to begin with. So I don't know. There's a few that maybe have a slight cough right now. Okay, just change of season. The weather's been highly volatile here. 5 days ago it was 85 degrees, and this morning it was 35 when we woke up. So just like human, I've got kind of a scratchy throat, and all our kids both have runny noses. So when cattle get sick, and if it's severe enough that their body isn't fighting the issue themselves, they then will be vaccinated and given medicine to help that. So over time, livestock quality assurance has really evolved, and we've been able to find better practices as far as how to care and treat for our livestock. And all vaccinations are given in areas of the calf that are less less high priced or high quality cuts of meat. And so it's they go in their neck. Okay, subcutaneous is what we call that, and you just lift the skin up, and the medication goes right into their body, and just like humans. So most people are vaccinated when they're babies. Well, our cattle, most are, and so then they are prevented. It's that preventative maintenance. Okay, and if a calf gets sick on our farm, they're treated just like our children are. You know, if our kids get sick, we want them to have the best quality of life. So we do not want the cattle to be inhibited from a growth standpoint. We don't want them to feel lousy. We want them to have the best quality of life and feel the best that they can every single day on our farm. Now, if a calf gets injured, same kind of conversation. Depending on what the injury is, of course, we'll call our veterinarian for the consultation to make sure that, even though, we see these animals every day, the veterinarian is trained and is a professional in that trade. And so we want to make sure that what we're seeing and what the vet sees, that we're taking care of that animal for the right issue when that arises.
Okay, Erin, let's maybe talk about withdrawal times on antibiotics. I mean, they're a very important tool, and like you said, they're often a last resort. Just like when we get sick, you don't like going to the doctor, you don't like having to take medicine. We try to do some more like homeopathic type things, eating a bowl of chicken noodle soup. But when we do have to use antibiotics, it's very important that we make sure that they're never going to reach the food supply whatsoever.
Oh yeah, absolutely, Campbell. So when a calf is treated on our farm, we have to make sure that the withdrawal time, so that's the time of when you give the medication to when it's out of their system, that time frame, that calf does not go to market in that time frame. So medication withdrawals are all over the place. But let's say that today one of these heifers gets sick and she was weighing about 800 pounds. We give her the appropriate dosage based on the medication label and further recommendation of our veterinarian. We give her that medication, and let's say the withdrawal time is 30 days. So in 30 days, between now and 30 days, that calf cannot go to market. It's illegal. We cannot do that because we want that medication to be out of her system, so that when she enters the food supply or the food chain, she is no longer carrying any of those antibiotics in her system. It's extremely expensive to treat livestock. And so as a producer, like Campbell alluded to, we want to, obviously, if we see something very severe, we're going to treat them immediately. But if their body cannot ward that infection off or that bacteria off itself, we then treat them, make sure that whatever the withdrawal time is, that we are appropriately administering those medications in that amount of time before that animal goes to market. No food that you get on your table, beef, pork, chicken, lamb, none of those animal proteins have traces of antibiotics in them. It's illegal for the producer to send an animal to market during that time.
Very good, cool. We've got another question here from Ross Middle School about growth hormones and how do they work. Maybe you can go through a little bit of that.
Sure. So a lot of discussion about that. So all animals have naturally producing hormones, just like you guys. So those of you in middle school, you're producing a lot more hormones than my 8-year-old. Okay, so as animals grow, they have naturally occurring hormones throughout their body. So anything that is given a growth hormone, what that does is that helps the animal grow, helps them sustain their body mass, and it helps them be able to what am I trying to say? Pass that, process their feed and just grow in a more functioning manner. So our cattle actually are not given any additional growth hormones because of how we choose to raise them. But that does not say that cattle that are administered an extra growth hormone, all that does is just help them continue to grow, maintain their health and their body mass to process their feed and grow in a efficient manner.
Very good. It's probably a good time to start maybe talking about there's a lot of feed going into these animals, a lot of water going into these animals. Something's got to come out the back end. Let's maybe talk about how we take care of manure and how it's actually an incredibly important tool to have to get back to the land when it's used correctly.
Sure, absolutely. So, like I said, these cattle are eating about 15 pounds of feed per day. So with input comes output, right? And I'm sure you can see, actually, we try to maintain a very clean facility. Our cattle, any manure that they produce is cleaned up within a certain amount of time. And here in the Western Lake Erie Basin, water quality and manure management is a really hot topic right now. I don't remember where all of you are from, but I'm sure some of you are from, have heard a lot of these conversations in the media and everything like that, even from the Ohio Cattlemen's Association and some of their publications and such, as they're fighting to do the best by us cattle producers. But with the manure that we produce, we clean that out. We have a stockpiling area because by law, there are certain times of the year which we cannot spread manure, which is great. I mean, that's really just is very common sense, right? When there's snow cover on the ground or after there's been a certain amount of rain, we cannot spread manure because we don't want that highly nutrient product to be run off into our ditches and streams, which then impacts our lakes. So we clean that manure up, we stockpile it until a certain time of year, and then once we cut wheat and we plant our cover crops, we then are able to cut wheat or beans or whatever and plant our cover crops. We're able to spread that manure, which then puts those nutrients back into the soil. And what that does is that helps us alleviate a lot of our synthetic and commercial fertilizers because of the manure that we're producing here on our farm. And so from our farm, we have the manure and the nutrients, which then grows the crop, which then we cut for silage, or the corn, of which we take to the ethanol plant that produces the co-product in distillers, feeds the cows, which have the calves, which come back to the feedlot, which produce the manure. So we really like the whole life cycle aspect that we have on our farm. But the manure management and the nutrient management, that's something we take very seriously and something that is super important to our region, all throughout Ohio especially, but our region, and we have to be very considerate of the volume and the time frame of which we apply that manure to the land that we are caretakers for.
Good, guys. So we got about 10 minutes left. Let's make sure we get all of your questions that you want answered, either in chat or give us a wave on your camera there. And if we actually can pull that graphic up here in a second, Erin, we've got a graphic that we can show about like the differences in hormone levels, like with beef versus some other products that we're probably eating on a more frequent basis. So as he tease that up here momentarily, like Erin said, hormones are in everything that we do. They're in ourselves every single day, and one of the things that gets covered in the media very, very frequently is having hormones in your food is bad. So here's kind of hormones in cattle and kind of where they're at. So there's a lot of things that are considered more healthy at the top of this list. So tofu, if you would ask the general person what's healthier for you, tofu or beef, they're probably going to say tofu just from some misinformation. So they have 51 million nanograms of estrogen in it, and this is just in 8-ounce servings. So let's keep going down. Pinto beans at 400,000 nanograms. White bread, 130. You guys are probably having that maybe on a daily basis. Peanuts, 450,000 nanograms. Eggs, 252 nanograms. We're starting to get a little bit lower. And then at the bottom here, we have beef. So an implanted steer would be one that has a growth promotant put in it, and it's put in the ear. We never eat ears, so there's no risk of being exposed. So 3 nanograms, and then unimplanted beef, that's 2 nanograms. So realistically, there's not that much impact on your daily intake of outside hormones, especially with beef. So the kind of a, yes, there is a difference, but 1 nanogram is, you're consuming more butter and milk in a lot of areas where you're getting something else. So there is a difference, a marketable difference, and being in marketing, I understand what they're doing there. So great infographic there. Anybody have any questions? Indian Valley, Ross, you guys have anything? I'm not seeing any. We got one over there at Ross, so if we can switch over to you guys. All right, your microphone's unmuted. Go ahead.
Wait, did you have a question?
What is
He just said that. I told that earlier, didn't you?
That's okay. Well, what was the question?
Did you get? What was the question about? Okay, so what? So they want to know what mad cow disease is.
Oh Lord. Okay. That's a fair question. That's good. Campbell, you want to take that one? Just so.
So mad cow disease, BSE, bovine spongiform encephalopathy, is the scientific name. So it's a prion. So it's essentially a brain disease that back in the it's been a long time now, 15 years plus. There was a big scare in Europe about BSE being in your meat, and then there are certain forms of it that could be given to humans if you would consume an animal that had BSE. That's never happened within beef, and we're very grateful for that. And that's what our food safety, food safety inspection service, USDA, they work every single day, 24/7, 365 days a year to make sure that that never happens. There have been just a few occurrences here in the United States, but none of them ever posed a risk to the food chain. So it comes from a variety of things. It can get passed from deer, from sheep, but prions are kind of the culprit behind it. And thankfully, we don't hear about it a lot, and there's little to absolutely no risk with BSE. So I hope my less scientific explanation helped out. So another question from Ross.
Go ahead. Who was asking that one?
I didn't say anything. Did y'all slaughter your own meat?
Did you hear that one?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. No,
the
what was the question?
Was, you guys harvest your own meat? Maybe talk about that last step and what that looks like.
Sure. No, that's a really good question. Thanks for that one. So actually, we do not harvest our own meat here. So what happens is once the cattle are about 16 months of age and approximately 1,300 pounds, they are then loaded on a truck and taken to a harvest facility. And from there, they are processed and then broken down into the various cuts of meat. So while we are capable of that, my husband actually has a master's degree in meat science and spent a large amount of time in the processing facility at Kansas State University. We do not harvest our own cattle here. That is not our standard practice. We trust our food supply and the system of which harvesting livestock is in the United States. And so sending these cattle to the harvest facilities so they can enter the supply chain in the safest, most effective manner and timely, we send them there for the end of their life.
Yeah, great question. Any other questions? Raise your hand real quick. We got just a few more minutes.
Well, and you guys can kind of see, I don't know if Nick wants to, that whole pen down there, they're all laying down. So I don't know if you can see, it's kind of far away. These girls here are a little more curious. They're younger, and so just like a younger person, they just want to know what's going on. And these cattle down here in the far pen, these are all steers and heifers that are probably closer to 1,200 to 1,300 pounds. So they're coming closer to the end of their life cycle. But in this building, they are just calm, cool, and content. You can hear there's not a lot of mooing, not a lot of discomfort. These cattle aren't running around crazy. But these calves in the back pen here, they're just enjoying this beautiful morning here that we have in Northwest Ohio. So we do our best to keep these cattle content and contained and calm all year long. And this building, you can see we've got curtains that can drop down that will help sustain from the wind, rain, the elements. And these cattle are comfortable year in and year out.
Aaron, we've just got 2 or 3 minutes left. Let's maybe talk about being around the animals and handling them. Like that takes a lot of training and a lot of getting used to them. Maybe talk a little bit about that because it's very the big animals. It's important to keep them safe and you.
Sure, absolutely. That's a great question. Thanks, Campbell. So it's really important when you're moving around livestock that you are calm. Cattle and all livestock, for that matter, can sense when someone's nervous or uncomfortable. And, while at times, admittedly, I can get a little uncomfortable around some of the bigger steers, just because they're big, they're big animals. But it's really important that you stay calm, that you move slowly, and the closer you can stay to the edges of your pens and things like that, the more comfortable the cattle feel. They don't feel you as much of a threat, or kind of a unknown to what they're doing. Because when you come in their pen, that's their domain, right? I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but when you're into their pen, you're in their domain. And so when you come and disrupt that system, so if I was to go walk in the far pen here with with the other bigger fat cattle, they would get up and they'd probably start kind of mulling around and trying to figure things out. And these younger ones, they're not as used to us. So we try to come into this building every single day. We do come into this building every single day and walk amongst these cattle so that they can become comfortable and familiar with us. So that way, every time they're worked or if they're sick, it's much less stress on the animal and on us. So that way, they're not overreacting and things don't become volatile at any point when we are walking amongst them.
Very good. So that brings us to the end of our field trip here. So we'd just like to take a minute and thank Erin for having us out today. So we'll unmute your microphones and let's go ahead and thank Erin for having us out today.
Thank you. Thank you, Erin.
You're welcome, guys. Thanks for your time, and happy to answer any questions later too if something comes to mind. Have a great Friday.
Yep, absolutely, guys. If you guys do have questions, have your teacher send us an email, and we'd be more than happy to get them answered. So once again, thank you for being in here this morning, and we'll talk to you later. Thanks, guys.
There's the other school you want.